item of public input. It is Sharon Byron Mackay, and I think Sharon is with, and Corin Sellers from they want to talk about continuation of Devonport's no spray policy. So ladies, if you would come forward to the seats, just straight opposite me here. There are 2 seats there, and there's a microphone which is self-activated. So you've got 5 minutes for your presentation, and there'll be a couple of questions from the councillors at the end of the presentation. So welcome, and we'd like to hear your presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sharon Byron Mackay. I am the spokesperson for Devonport Toxic Action Group, and I work as a health professional. Devonport residents and ratepayers are concerned at the proposed change 5.5 of Unitary Plan Policy, that is to increase the use of chemicals and discontinue mechanical means for weed control in Devonport.
Sorry.
No, I'm just putting up a slide here.
No, we seem to have lost the slides.
Okay. Issues that need to be addressed. Inadequate public consultation process. Our community believes that there is a lack of public consultation on this issue and that a 10-year budget feedback form is inadequate. I believe the last consultation process carried out in this way resulted in very few replies from Devonport public. Silence is not an indication of agreement, support or disagreement, and should not be used in this way by Auckland Council to do as they like. Such an action as cutting mechanical weed control for budgetary gain cannot be successful if a key stakeholder, such as the community, is not closely worked with, especially if Auckland Council is seen not to be maximising the protection of public health of its good citizens and ratepayers. Second issue. Devonport has had a chemical-free policy for weed control for our parks and berms for 21 years. Devonport has bought into being chemical-free for weed control of our parks, berms and sports fields. And behest a chemical-free policy be included in the Unitary Council's long-term plan. Third issue to be addressed. Proposed public notification is not working because Council cannot notify all residents of exact dates and time that spraying is to take place due to practical limitations imposed by the weather. I refer you to Parks, Recreational and Heritage Forum 2013. But the general public needs to be notified of Council's intention to chemical spray. This leaves children vulnerable to unknowingly come across potentially toxic spray drift at parks, pathways, playground equipment, along walkways to school. This leading to acute exposure to glyphosate. Next issue, water contamination. Devonport has had a long history of good water quality. Glyphosate is emerging as a seabed sediment contaminant in Auckland beaches. I refer you to NIWA 2014. Will there be any follow-up with these findings? I think not, as there is no testing to date for glyphosate or no limits set. If glyphosate is sprayed in Devonport, we too could follow other Auckland beaches with seabed contamination. Storms or change of sea tides result in sediment movement. Since testing for glyphosate and seabed sediment is not carried out by council, without this we have absolutely no idea of changes in this build-up over time, whether it is happening slowly or quickly. Our children, in the meantime, are swimming at these beaches, quite possibly being exposed to glyphosate. Dr. Morgan, former PCE, in a letter to TAG in 2006, warns a precautionary approach is warranted in the use of herbicides by council, where there is a potential for substances to be washed into fresh coastal water systems. This is particularly the case where viable alternative options are available. Next issue, weed grass resistance to glyphosate. 2013 report by Massey University recommends removing the need of herbicide use in urban waste areas for weed control, as grasses are now resistant to glyphosate and will soon be to malsulfuron. And surely this may not be just limited and restricted to waste areas. Is increasing glyphosate use not a losing battle for council, wasting taxpayers' money, and at the same time creating super weeds? Next issue, environment concerns voiced by Dr. Jan Wright, PCE. Comments to TAG in a letter dated 2009 in reference to the formation of the Unitary Council. I agree that it is important for councils to consider the environmental implications of pesticides in their daily activities, and that she hoped that any future policies that are adopted make good environmental management a priority. Failing to face the reality of pragmatic management for weed control for our city in their inherent physical, social and legal complexities will ensure future generations are left to deal with this legacy. On behalf of over 1,000 Devonport residents and ratepayers, we implore this committee to recommend to Auckland Council that further use of glyphosate should be banned for weed control, and that a more sustainable non-chemical method of weed control be used in our cities for our long-term plan and be enshrined in policy. Let's keep Auckland clean and green for future generations to enjoy for decades to come. I now invite...
No, sorry, I think you're up for 5 minutes now, so...
Oh, I understand that there's only one other person to talk and that there's a 30-minute slot.
Sorry, 5 minutes is the time that you have for your presentation.
We've put several hours of work into this presentation.
I'm sorry, but you were the person...
I'm happy to move an extension, Mr. Chair.
You were the person that made the application, and it's 5
but
minutes.
But I was asked if another person. I asked if another person could speak, and that was agreed to.
Well, usually the submitter speaks for 5 minutes or less, and then we have questions.
I would be grateful if we could be heard out. It will only be a very brief. Will be only be very brief.
Okay, well, there'll be no questions then. I think that'll be the...
Oh, come on.
Order. If so, you know, you did get the 5 minutes, and that was the time.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
We're up to 5 minutes now.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
I would be really grateful if it will be very, very...
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order, Councillor Casey.
What
is the point of order?
There's been an extension of time requested and seconded.
I don't think we need an extension of time. I will grant the person a very brief time. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Corinne Sellers. I'm studying for my PhD in microbiology at Auckland University. I'm studying the link between autism and the microbiome. I have a son who's autistic, has a lot of problems at school, and I know a lot of mothers who are also in my situation. There's no funding in New Zealand to help these children, and so we try to reduce pesticides, herbicides, and all forms of chemicals from our children's food. Things like glyphosate used in the environment, they can disrupt metabolic processes in animals. They can also cause dysbiosis in the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome is now being studied as something that can cause disease. Many of these chemicals actually disrupt the microbiome, producing chemicals like C. difficile and bacteria, which produce toxins, which disrupt melatonin that's formed in the brain that help with sleep. Many psychiatric disorders can be caused by putting chemicals like this into the environment. I beseech you, please, just think about this before you do it. This is our future generations. These are my children. Sorry, it's a very emotive subject for me. I feel that you must look at this before you do it. There are alternatives to these chemicals. If it gets into the groundwater, if it gets into the lakes, the streams, the beaches, what will happen then? It'll be too late. Thank you. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. I just remind councillors that this matter is actually before the, it's contained within the proposed Auckland Unitary Plan, and that matter is now before the Unitary Plan Hearings Committee. So, and it's also within the long-term plan. So I just want to point that out. I'm just pointing that out to councillors. I will take 2 questions.
Point of clarification first.
Point of clarification.
Where is it covered off in the unitary plan? You mentioned that. I don't have any understanding of that. No. There is some mention, I think, in the long-term plan around a change to chemicals, but nothing in the unitary plan.
Sorry.
So there's a briefing provided that I have on this particular issue and how we're looking to address it in a joined-up fashion across council, Councillor Walker. And in the proposed unitary plan, it's looking to set standards for the use of herbicides, including the need to meet New Zealand standards through various operator requirements, etc. And therefore, if the unitary plan anticipates that if those standards are met, then that would be a mechanism for allowing the use on roads or parks, road reserves. So you do need to just double check the unitary plan, but that's the briefing note I've got in front of me. And then we all know that it's part of the long-term plan and one of the proposals before you, and that it's being dealt through that process as an issue.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, have you got a question?
Sure, wouldn't mind having that in black and white, just so I can get my head around it, because I don't recall too much in the unitary plan around the use of chemicals.
Okay, thank you.
So we can certainly provide that.
Certainly, thank you. I had a question.
Yes.
My understanding is that a chemical-free approach has been used in the Devonport-Takapuna area for quite some time. I can't remember how many years.
21 years.
21 years, yes.
Okay, and that approach has been cost-effective. Would just invite a response around that.
I understand that it's been extremely successful. It's been successful in maintaining weed control in the suburb, and I can only talk from our residents' point of view, and that is that they feel extremely happy with it and are extremely concerned that we will lose that right. And Devonport residents see it as their right. It was fought for 21 years ago, and it was behest by the residents of Devonport that we have a chemical-free policy.
And
Thank
further
you.
to that,
Councillor Watson?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on your comment about the absence of community consultation. There are areas beside Devonport, of course. There's the Albany ward, for instance, where the councillors and the local board are unanimous, both boards, in wanting chemical-free applications to be used. Do you think that, given that we know that there is options and that options are cost effective, in fact, my understanding, Mr. Chairman, is that some applicants, applicators, biothermal, for instance, can do their chemical-free application cheaper than chemicals. So, with that being the case, would you support this going out to the public as a whole for consultation, so the various wards, local board areas could decide what suits their communities best?
Absolutely, and I was under the understanding that during the formation of the Unitary Council that that was one of the promises, that local communities would retain their local democracy.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to move that we thank...
happy to second.
Receive the presentation, I can't read it now, from Sharon Byron Mackay and Corin Sellers with regard to the continuation of Devonport's no spray policy. Seconded by Councillor Walker. Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Look, I'd like to acknowledge the submitters. Very passionate, but also very well researched and evidenced. And, you know, Devonport, yes, it's my patch, you could say, but Devonport's led on a lot of environmental things, from challenging the government on nuclear to...
Sorry, point of order?
Is this a point of order?
What is your point of order, Councillor?
Well, I thought that, are we now going into a discussion on this?
No, well, we are going to a discussion. I don't think we can have a discussion, but Councillor Darby, being a local councillor, I think he wanted to say something, but I don't want, I don't want it to be a long dissertation, please, Councillor Darby.
No, I'm acknowledging, there's a motion here to acknowledge the submitters,
Yes,
and that's
okay,
what I'm
that's
speaking
what we're
to. I'm
talking to. I
acknowledging
don't want to get into the technical details.
these submitters.
Speaking to it.
And I'm acknowledging what goes before these submitters is the history of this community. In the nuclear area, in the recycling area, it led Auckland. And I'm saying, councillors, take note that this community and the wider community of the whole peninsula is leading on this issue as well. And I'll leave you with this note, that the hot water contractor in that area that worked this concept up of hot water control has been dismissed by Auckland Transport, even when it has passed all its audit reports.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, did you...
Just, Mr Chairman, and given this is a policy committee, the weed management policy in Objective 3 talks about minimising agrochemical use and for CCOs to do their very best to provide innovation. I mean, maybe, is it timely, Mr Chairman, to either have a look at that again or at least have...
No, I think,
Councillor
Cooper,
send something to us, that's all.
You've already been told that this is being looked at in the unitary plan, proposed unitary plan, and it is also being looked at in the long-term plan, or the draft long-term plan. So I don't want to, I'm not going to have a discussion here on the merits or have anything flowing on from this presentation, which is the rules we usually have, that presentations are received and we don't get into a debate on the merits or otherwise of the issue.
I wasn't debating the merits.
So what we're doing here now is just thanking the presenters for their presentation. Councillors have heard the information. Councillors will be supplied with a copy of what Mr Kimpton has alluded to when he spoke to Councillor Walker.
Thank you.
I think that is as far as we can take the matter at this stage. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Yes?
Yeah. I wonder if it would be, because there seems to be some confusion, and I'm glad that the submitters have raised this issue, because the standing orders can be a little bit confusing, and it's up to council officials when people make a request for a public presentation, that they're very clear on what the standing orders say. And, you know, you can be, and I think that the submitters were confused by the fact that they thought that 30 minutes maximum was for their presentation, when in fact each presentation is just for 5 minutes. And, you know, council officials need to tell the presenters that, because otherwise it does become confusing, and also it's not fair on the presenters, who go to a lot of trouble in many cases to make a presentation and then find, well, hang on, instead of the 30 minutes that we thought we had, we've actually only got 5 minutes. So I think it's really, it's behoven on our officials to make sure that that's clear.
Okay, well, Mr. Kimpton can answer that.
So, look, Councillor Quacks, thank you for that. The important point is we always look to make it as very clear as we can. We believe in this instance we have a 30-minute slot for public input, up to 5 minutes for each. If we need to make that clearer, then we will make that clearer. It is our understanding that that was clearly communicated in this instance, but maybe it's misunderstood. We'll endeavour to do that more clearly in future. Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Well, thank you very much for coming in and making the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Fletcher.